Welcome to PCOS and Prosecco, a space where we're not just talking about hormones and weight loss. We're dismantling generations of silence, shame, and survival. I'm Tiana, a registered nurse, a PCOS hormone coach, and a mom who has lived through the heartbreak of infertility and miscarriages, the exhaustion of hormonal chaos, and the suffocating fear that I will never be enough. But what I learned through my journey is that PCOS wasn't about my body. It was a mirror reflecting the generational wounds, the trauma, the unspoken pain that I inherited and needed to heal. This podcast isn't just another wellness chat. It's for the woman who knows she's carrying more than her own struggles, the woman who feels the weight of her mother's battles, her grandmother's silence, and her own yearning to finally break free. So if you're ready to stop hiding behind the diets, doctor's visits, and temporary fixes, if you're ready to heal not just your hormones, but your heart, your lineage, and your future, you're in the right place. Cheers. All right, welcome back to PCOS and Prosecco. Let's get real for a second. Have you ever felt like your cravings were running the show? Like no matter how much willpower you try to muster, the chips, cookies, or whatever your go-to snack is always wins. You tell yourself, okay, just one more bite. And next thing you know, the bag is empty. You're full of regret and the cycle starts all over again. Sound familiar? You're not alone, sis. Let me hit you with some facts. Studies show that up to 70% of women with PCOS deal with intense cravings and even binge eating. That's not just a little issue, it's a whole thing. And let me tell you, it's not your fault. These cravings are tied to what's happening inside of your body, not a lack of willpower. Hormonal imbalances, blood sugar dips, insulin resistance, it's a hot mess that makes you feel like food has all of the power and you've got none. Today, we're diving into the story of one of my clients who is stuck in this exact same cycle. I'm talking sugar cravings that hit like clockwork, late night binges, and the guilt and frustration that followed every single time. She felt completely out of control, like food was calling the shots and she was just along for the ride. But here's the plot twist. By the end of our work together, she went from feeling controlled by food to feeling completely in charge of her own choices. And when I say completely in charge, I mean walking past a bakery without a second thought. And yes, it's possible. In this episode, I'm breaking down exactly how we made that transformation happen. I'll share on how we stabilized her blood sugars, managed her insulin resistance, and completely rebuilt her relationship with food. So if cravings and binge eating are something you've been battling, grab a notebook or at least a pen or at least open the notes app, okay? Because this one is going to be packed with because this one's going to be packed with because this one's going to be packed with the kind of tips and perspective shifts you need to start taking control. So let's get into it. Let me take you back to my client was when she first came to me, because honestly, her story might feel all too familiar. She was completely overwhelmed and feeling defeated. Every single day, she battled intense sugar cravings that seemed to come out of nowhere and completely hijack her focus. And when I say intense, I mean she'd be sitting at work, minding her business, and suddenly it was like her body was screaming, go find something sweet right now. It wasn't even about being hungry. It was this uncontrollable urge that she felt powerless against. And when she got home in the evenings, it was even worse. She'd tell herself, okay, I'll just have one bite of chocolate or a small bowl of ice cream. But let's get real. How many of us have ever stopped at just one bite? Next thing she knew, she had gone through half the pantry and the guilt would set in. The worst part, this wasn't just a once in a while thing. This was happening every single night. And it wasn't just the physical act of eating. It was what came after. She beat herself up saying, why can't I control myself? What's wrong with me? She told me, I feel like I'm failing. I'll do well for a few days. I'll eat healthy, say no to snacks, and think I'm finally back on track. But then out of nowhere, it's like a switch flips and I lose control. It's like my body hates me. Can we just pause for a second and acknowledge how heavy that is? Because it's not just about the food or the weight. It's about what happens to our confidence when you feel like your body isn't cooperating with you. It's about the emotional toll of constantly battling cravings and feeling like you're losing every single time. It's about the shame that creeps in when you start to believe that you're the problem, that you're weak or undisciplined, when the truth is none of that is your fault. Here's where the story takes a turn. The moment I started working with her, it was clear that this wasn't about willpower. Her cravings, her late night binges, and even her constant hunger, they were all signs of something so much deeper. Her body wasn't broken. It was beginning to ask for help. And when we dug into her symptoms and history, the root cause became crystal clear: insulin resistance and blood sugar imbalances. So let me break this down because this is so important. When your body is dealing with insulin resistance, it's like your cells are locked up and your body can't get the energy it needs from the food you're eating. So if you just had a full meal, the cells are starving for fuel. What does your body do in response? It sends out a distress signal. It's like, hey brain, we need sugar and fast. And that's why the cravings hit so hard and feel impossible to ignore. Your brain isn't just asking for sugar, it's demanding it because it thinks that you are running on empty. But it doesn't just stop there. When you give into those cravings and eat something sugary, your blood sugar spikes, and for a little while you feel better. Your brain's like, okay, crisis averted. But then the crash comes. And when your blood sugar crashes, guess what? Another craving. It's a vicious cycle. And the worst part is the more sugar you eat, the more the insulin resistance gets. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. She was also dealing with chronic fatigue, another telltale sign of blood sugar imbalances. No matter how much sleep she got, she always felt exhausted. Her body wasn't getting the energy it needed, so she felt like she was running on fumes 24/7. And on top of that, her cravings were triggering weight gain, which was adding to her frustration. Every time she tried to fix things by eating less or exercising more, it felt like her body was digging into its heels, refusing to cooperate. Now, here's where the light bulb really went off for her. I explained that this wasn't just about sugar cravings or late night snacks. This was about her PCOS. Craving and binge eating are incredibly common symptoms of PCOS, but they aren't talked about enough. And they're definitely not just in your head. They're your body's way of shouting, something's not right, girl. With PCOS, it's not just a reproductive condition. It's a metabolic condition, which means it affects the way your body processes food, stores fat, and even regulates hunger. Insulin resistance is one of the most common underlying issues with PCOS, and it's directly tied to cravings and binge eating. Your body's insulin is a key that's supposed to unlock the cells and let sugar in to be used as energy. But with insulin resistance, the key doesn't fit and your cells stay locked. So even when there's plenty of sugar in the bloodstream, your body can't use it and the cravings keep coming. Once I broke all this down for her, it was like the weight lifted off her shoulders. She said, I've been blaming myself this whole time, but now I see it's not me. It's my body trying to tell me that it's something wrong. That was the moment. That was the shift she needed. Because here's the thing, when you understand what's happening in your body, you can stop fighting it and start working with it. And that's where the real change starts to happen. But before we dive into the plan we created for her, I want to go back to something important, the emotional toll of all of this. Because cravings and binge eating aren't just physical. They take a toll on your mental health, your confidence, and how you see yourself. My client was carrying so much shame, thinking she was weak and lazy, when in reality, her body was doing exactly what it was designed to do. It was surviving. The problem wasn't her, it was the insulin resistance and the hormonal chaos caused by her PCOS. And if this sounds like you, I want you to know something. You are not broken. Your cravings aren't a sign of failure. They're a sign that your body needs support. And once you start addressing the root cause, everything can change. In the next segment, I'll break down the tailored plan we created for her. The one that stabilized her blood sugar, managed her insulin resistance, and helped her rebuild her relationship with food. If you've been battling cravings and feeling like food has all the power, trust me, you don't want to miss this. Let me tell you about my client because I know so many of you are going to see yourselves in her story. When we first started working together, she told me straight up, Tiana, I live for Uber Eats and I don't have time to cook. And when I do, I blow through my groceries by Thursday and end up ordering pizza or wings anyway. And honestly, she's not alone in that. Life is busy. And when you're juggling work, family, and everything else, it's easy to lean in on takeout. But the thing is, it wasn't all about convenience for her. It was about cravings that felt impossible to control. She told me, it's like my body is just calling the shots and I'm along for the ride. And that's when I knew we needed to shake things up. Step one, the first thing we did was tackle her blood sugars because let's be real, that's where so much of this chaos was coming from. Her blood sugar wasn't about willpower. They were about her blood sugar spiking and crashing throughout the day. And then we started looking at her habits, and it was clear why. She was skipping breakfast most days, grabbing a coffee or pastry mid-morning, and then hitting Uber Eats for lunch. Burgers, fries, tacos, you name it, she was ordering it. By the time dinner rolled around, she was either too tired to cook or too hungry to think straight. So she goes straight to the pantry, grab some chips, cookies, or whatever was easy. Sound familiar? Yeah, I thought so. The first thing I told her was, we're not taking away Uber Eats. We're just going to use it smarter. Instead of ordering carb heavy foods that sent her blood sugar into a tailspin, we started looking for meals with more balance. For those days where she actually made it to the grocery store, I gave her a simple rule: shop with intentions. Instead of blowing random snacks into your cart, start focusing on building meals that are balanced with protein, fiber, and healthy fats. For breakfast, instead of skipping or grabbing sugary cereal, she started making quick egg wraps with spinach and avocado. Lunch was simple as meal prepping chicken salads or ordering a protein packed grainy bowl from her favorite takeout spot. Dinner, sheet pan meals became her best friend. Think salmon, asparagus, sweet potato, all roasted together for an easy blood sugar friendly meal. All right. Within 2 weeks of making these changes, she noticed a shift. Her cravings weren't as intense and she felt satisfied after meals. She told me, for the first time in forever, I'm not always thinking about food. And that's how I knew that we were onto something. Next, we needed to address her insulin resistance. This was the root cause of her cravings and fatigue. Insulin resistance is tricky. It's like the body is knocking on the door, but the key isn't working. Sugar stays in the bloodstream instead of being used for energy, and the result is more cravings, more hunger, more frustration. One of the first tools we added was inositol. It's a supplement that's amazing for improving how our body processes insulin. She started taking it every morning, and within a few short weeks, she started to notice her energy improving. No more mid-afternoon crashes or needing that second or third coffee to make it through the day. We also focus on reducing some of her inflammation with omega-3 rich foods like salmon, walnuts, chia seeds. She started swapping her afternoon snack of chips for Greek yogurts with berries and flax seeds. Not only did this help with her insulin resistance, but her skin started clearing up too. Bonus. And because we were all about small, realistic changes, I didn't tell her to jump in the gym 5 days a week. Instead, we just started adding like small daily walks after her meals. All right. Whether it was pacing around the house, listening to her iPad, or walking her dog, this tiny habit helped her body process sugar more effectively, and it made a huge difference. Now let's talk about her relationship with food because this one was big. She'd been stuck in this cycle of guilt and frustration for so long, trying to be good during the week only to binge on the weekends, and it wasn't sustainable. It was taking a toll on her emotionally. So we introduced the 80-20 rule. Eating nutrient dense foods 80% of the time while leaving room for indulgences without guilt. She started ordering her favorite Uber Eats desserts once a week, intentionally, not impulsively. And she started actually enjoying it without feeling like she had ruined everything. She told me it feels good to eat what I love without beating myself up afterwards. We also had worked on uncovering the emotional triggers behind her binges. She started journaling about how she felt before and after eating. She realized that most of her late night snacks weren't about hunger. They were about the stress of work. Knowing that allowed her to find healthier ways to unwind, like taking a bath or calling a friend. Then we worked on her stress and sleep. These were two massive pieces of the puzzle. Her high cortisol levels for stress were making her insulin resistance levels worse, and her lack of quality sleep was leaving her too tired to make good food choices. We started with short, manageable stress practices. She began doing 10-minute guided meditations in the morning and doing some breathing exercises at her desk at work. It was small changes, but they made a big impact on how she handled stress. And as a result, her cravings disappeared significantly. For sleep, we focused on creating a more calming bedtime routine. Focused on turning off the screens 1 hour before bed, sipping on a calming tea at night, and even investing in some blackout curtains. Within a week, she was sleeping better, waking up with more energy, no extra sugar needed. Finally, we were tracking her progress as a priority. This wasn't about perfection, okay? It was about noticing the patterns that she is falling victim to and making adjustments so that I could support her. She started tracking her energy, her cravings, her emotional triggers in a simple journal. This helped us both spot trends. Like when her afternoon cravings spiked because she had missed her protein snack. When we noticed her energy dipping mid-afternoon, we added a protein-packed snack to her routine. A boiled egg with some veggies or a handful of almonds can do the trick, and her energy stayed steady throughout the day. Within a few short months, she went from living on Uber Eats and battling daily craving to feeling completely in control of her food choices. She told me, Tiana, I feel like I got my life back. I can walk into a grocery store and actually stick to my list. I can open the Uber Eats app and make a decision that feels good for me and my body. And for the first time, food isn't controlling me, girl. I'm in control. And that's the real win, isn't it? It's not about what you eat, it's about how you feel. And in the next segment, I'm going to share the breakthrough moments that solidified her transformation and the lessons you can apply to your own journey. Trust me, you do not want to miss this. Let's talk about the transformation because this is where things get really powerful. Within just 1 month of following her tailored plan, my client went from battling daily sugar cravings and nighttime binges to feeling in control of her food choices for the first time in years. And when I say in control, I don't mean she was restricting herself or trying to white knuckle her way through every craving. I mean, she was finally eating in a way that made her feel good without guilt or shame. She told me, Tiana, I don't even feel the need to start over every Monday anymore. I'm just living my life. Imagine that for a second. What would it feel like to wake up on a Monday morning and not feel the weight of regret from the weekend? This time I'll be good mantra running through your mind only to spiral by Wednesday. That's a reality she gained, and let me tell you, it was life-changing for her. One of the most beautiful moments in her journey came when she looked at me during one of our check-ins and said, for the first time in years, I don't feel like food is controlling me. I finally feel free. And I could see the relief in her eyes. Like a weight had been lifted off of her shoulders. This wasn't about the cravings disappearing. This was about the emotional shift that came with it. For so long, food had been the source of stress and shame for her. She spent years feeling like a failure every time she reached for the snacks or placed the Uber Eats order. But now she could enjoy her favorite foods without feeling like she'd ruined everything. She was making intentional choices, not reactive ones, and that made all the difference. One moment that really stood out was when she told me about a trip to the grocery store. She said, Tiana, for the first time, I walked past that cookie out and I didn't think that I needed to grab a box. I didn't feel deprived. I didn't even want them. This might sound small, but for her, this was huge. This was a sign that her body and her mind was finally on the same page. And here's what I really want you to take away. This didn't happen overnight. It wasn't some magical fix or 1 week transformation. It took time, consistency, and patience to get here. That's something I always emphasize with my clients because in a world where we constantly bombarded with lose 10 pounds in 10 days or fix your cravings in a week promises, it's easy to feel like you're falling off if you don't see results immediately. For her, the process wasn't linear. There were moments where she doubted herself, moments where the cravings peeped back in, and moments where she felt frustrated, but she stuck with it. She trusted the process, made small intentional changes, and celebrated the little wins along the way. And those little wins, they added up to something incredible. This wasn't just about a quick fix. It was about creating sustainable habits that allowed her to feel good in her body for the long term. She just didn't get rid of the craving. She gained her confidence, her freedom, her sense of self-control. She hadn't felt that in years. Her journey is proof that healing is possible. You don't have to live in constant battle with food or feel like cravings are controlling your life. With the right plan, patience, and support, you get to take control and create a relationship with food that feels empowering, not exhausting. In the next segment, I'll break down the key lessons from her journey and how you can start applying them to your own life. So if this story is hitting home for you, stay tuned because you're about to get actionable steps you can make to make this kind of transformation your reality. Now that you heard her story, let's break down some of the lessons and takeaway that you can start applying to your own life. Because here's the thing, cravings are not your fault. Let me say that again for the people in the back, okay? Cravings are not your fault. If you've been battling cravings, binge eating, or feeling like food is controlling you, I want you to know that this is not a reflection of your willpower discipline. It's your body's way of saying, hey, something's off, help me out. And when you start listening to those signals instead of fighting them off, that's when everything changes. We live in a culture that loves to blame cravings on bad habits or weakness. How many times have you heard someone say, just don't buy the snacks, or you just need to be more disciplined? But cravings are not about the discipline. It's about biology. They're your body's SOS signal that something deeper is going on, whether it's blood sugar imbalances, insulin resistance, stress, or lack of sleep. For my client, her cravings weren't just random. They were tied directly to her insulin resistance and blood sugar crashes. Her body wasn't getting the energy it needed from food, so it kept demanding more. And sugar is the fastest source of energy. Once we addressed the root cause, the cravings naturally started to fade. And the same thing can happen to you. So if you're stuck in the cycle of cravings and feeling guilty about giving in, I want to let you know to let that guilt go, that your body isn't broken. It's just trying to tell you something. And the sooner you start listening, the sooner you can take back control. Now, let me ask you this. What would it feel like to wake up in the morning and not immediately start thinking about food? To walk past the cookie aisle at the grocery aisle and not feel that pull to get a box? To sit down to a meal and actually enjoy it without guilt or overthinking? That freedom is possible. My client is living proof of that. So here's to that. You don't have to figure this out alone. If you're ready to take control of the craving and rebuild your relationship with food, I'm here to help you. Whether it's through my podcast, my programs, or my one-on-one coaching, my goal is to help give you the tools you need so that you can feel confident and in control. So here's what I want you to do. Pick one thing from today's episode and start implementing it. Maybe it's focusing on more balanced meals. Maybe it's adding stress management practices to your day. Start small, be consistent, and trust the process. Remember, this isn't about being perfect. It's about making progress. Every small step you take is a small step towards feeling better in your body and gaining the freedom that you deserve because you got this. And if you're ready to dive deeper and work with me one-on-one, visit Love Surf Warm or apply for my program today because you don't have to do this alone. And the first step to healing is just a decision away. Thank you for tuning in. If you found this episode helpful, share it with a friend who might need it or leave a review. Your review means the world to me, and it helps this podcast reach more women who need it. So until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, you are stronger than your cravings, and you have the power to control. So remember, you are stronger than your cravings, and you have the power to take control. I'll see you on the next episode. Cheers. Thank you for joining me today on PCOS and Prosecco. If you're here, I know you felt the frustration of fighting your own body, the heartbreak of feeling like nothing's working, and the weight of carrying it all alone. But here's the truth. You don't have to keep living this way. Healing is possible. You can lose the weight, fix your cycle, and finally feel like yourself again. That's why I created the Healthy PCOS Protocol, a program designed to meet you where you are and help you take back control of your health and your story.